Well, Labour's finance spokesperson Grant Robertson joins me now. Good evening. Is this transformational tax policy?
This is tax policy that's appropriate for this time of COVID-19. It's a time of massive uncertainty for everybody. And so what we've done is put forward a policy that we think is balance right between giving certainty to people, but also asking 2% of New Zealanders to pitch in a bit more. For 98% of New Zealanders, nothing will change. And I think at this period in our history and at this moment in time, that is the right approach.
But would you concede in saying that it's not transformational tax policy? It's right for right now.
That's correct. I mean, I'm not trying to sell it up as anything other than the right policy for this time. Clearly, COVID-19 has come along and disrupted our world. We have a suite of policies that are about, future-proofing our economy, building New Zealand back better as part of our economic plan. This revenue policy supports that, but obviously we are aiming for sustainable growth through that economic development policy, which is about things like skills and small business and investing in infrastructure.
Well, can you talk me through your thinking here? Why not go for a lower dollar figure that triggers the tax bracket, or a higher percentage of tax take?
Again, it's a balanced question. I mean, obviously this affects 2% of taxpayers. We wanted to make sure that the vast bulk of New Zealanders, 98% in the case of this policy, knew that things were going to stay stable, that there was continuity, that they could understand the contribution that they would be making to keeping our vital public services going and to keeping a lid on debt. And we felt that those in the top 2% could pitch in and a little more to help us do that. So really it was just a question of balance and making sure that we were able to support the services we need.
Previously, you had a policy 36% rate on 150k. Would that have given you more in comparison, and why not default to that position?
That was a previous Labor Party policy in times gone by. It wasn't one that we looked at this time round. We felt that 39 cents was a reasonable amount for people earning $180,000 or more than $180,000 to pay.
It doesn't give you that much, though, does it, in revenue? Because you're talking about $500 million here. In terms of COVID-specific borrowing, what will be the total by the end of the year that you've borrowed?
Yeah, look, obviously I understand that relative to what we're spending on COVID, we've got the $50 billion fund there. That is important in terms of that massive response that we gave, things like the wage subsidy scheme, and we've still kept $14 billion back. This is permanent. This is a permanent change to the tax system. It'll be $2 billion over the 4-year period that we do budgets, and that will support the provision of services like health and education and help keep debt under control.
So is COVID basically just giving you the social licence to do what you wanted to do anyway, but it might have been just a bit more unpalatable to people if there wasn't COVID?
Well, look, the way that the Labor Party puts its policies together is that from the whole period we've had COVID is the period in which we've been putting this together. And so that's clearly been part of the picture, that we are in the face of a 1 in 100-year shock where we're still not sure, anyone in the world is not sure of what the outcome will be. So, no, this is something that we believe is the right thing to do. It's a position that, builds on our progressive tax system, sees 2% of New Zealanders pay a little more and 98% stay the same. And that's, to me, the balance that we need in such uncertain times.
But if you describe it as right for right now, if you weren't compromising because of COVID, if you weren't trying to seek that balance that COVID has enforced on you, what would your tax policy be? What would you have gone for?
Oh, look, I don't think, unfortunately, that at least there is a very, very much a hypothetical situation.
So is this vastly different from what you would otherwise propose?
Not particularly, but I don't think it's possible to disentangle ourselves from the situation we find ourselves in. As a political party, it's our job to be able to give New Zealanders that sense of certainty, that sense of confidence going forward from here. We've invested a huge sum of money in making sure that we've got New Zealanders through this with things like the wage subsidy.
Okay.
We've still got $14 billion there. This is a change that I'm happy to stand beside, but we can't have a hypothetical situation. We're in COVID. We've got to deal with it.
You've made some guarantees around this. You say that there's going to be no other taxes and no other increases in income tax, right? Surely that's dependent on on your coalition partners in any negotiations, or are you saying this is an absolute bottom line, no matter who you might be in government with? If indeed you are.
This is Labor's tax policy, and what we're saying is this is what we will be implementing in this term of government if we get the opportunity to be elected.
When you say it's Labor's tax policy, I just want to be clear, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but this is really important because that's been said about other policies that you've had as well. That was Labor's policy, but hey, we're working in an MMP environment and these are what our partners want. So, are you saying this is absolutely a bottom line for tax? Or if, for example, you go in with the Greens and they want more and they dig their toes in, is this negotiable?
This is the tax policy that we will be implementing as a Labor government.
Whether you're in coalition or not?
As I say, we're campaigning for ourselves. This is what an election is about. Other parties are fully entitled to campaign for
I understand that. I really do understand that. But what I'm saying is it's one thing to promise people that this is Labor's policy, and it's another to say that regardless of what any partners in government want, you are going to stick with this. So I'll just ask it again to be absolutely sure. Is this your bottom line in terms of income tax policy if you need to form a coalition or a confidence and supply agreement?
A Labor government will be implementing the policy that we announced today, Lisa. It's not a matter of bottom lines for us from this perspective, and I haven't actually heard the Green Party use that phrasing either. From our perspective, this is what we will implement, just what we announced today.
Won't wealthy people just be able to avoid this via financial setups, trusts and using advisors?
Well, no, because we've resourced the Inland Revenue Department to make sure that that can't happen. And if people are avoiding or evading their taxes, we will crack down on them. And I'm confident with the new systems we've got at IRD, we will do that. I think the vast majority of New Zealanders are law-abiding and they pay their taxes as they're meant to. For those that don't, we will crack down on them.
Do you regret ruling out a capital gains tax? Because arguably you've backed yourself into a corner with what options are available to you right now.
Well, that was a decision that was taken, and I backed that decision by the Prime Minister. We've been very clear about that. We're sticking to our word on that. There are many things that we can do to improve people's access to housing, particularly on the supply side, where we make sure we do build more houses, but also on programs like progressive home ownership, where we can support people into them. So, again, coming back to the beginning of the interview, Lisa, this is the right policy for this time to provide certainty and stability.
We're pushed for time, but can I get a quick answer on this? So multinationals paying their fair share of tax, you're waiting on an OECD recommendations here. Can you guarantee the introduction of a targeted tax regime for those companies in the next term, should you be in government?
That is our intention if the multilateral negotiations fail. It will be far better for New Zealand if we can actually get an agreement that sticks across the world. But if it doesn't, we will introduce a tax, and that's what we announced today.
Appreciate your time this evening. That's Labor's finance spokesperson, Grant Robertson.